Morning. Hello, hello. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Hello. We found a helper in the parking lot. That was so nice of this gentleman helping us. Let's see what this is.
Yeah, John.
Why, thank you.
How are you?
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
Let's see what else we got.
No, that's okay. Take one of each if that's enough.
Kind of tight in here. You like that, huh?
Yeah.
That was foul, huh? Yeah. Furnace ran all night.
All right. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see
Did
you.
I see your name on the building out here? Is this
Oh, this is my brother.
That's your brother. Oh, okay. What is that?
Funny.
Funny guy. Anyway, well, as we get started, why don't we start with the pledge? And so if you don't mind standing. And who wants to lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we thank our host here at the town of Ellery for opening up the doors and spending some time. And thank you again for coming out this early morning. We got four of these. We have four of these town halls today. So we're starting here and working our way back towards morning. Maybe I didn't see my wife and kids tonight, but I couldn't get home about that. So I returned home from D.C. on Thursday night and spent the day yesterday over here in Chautauqua County and had some great visits and some great meetings and talking with people. But we do these town halls to really try to have a conversation. We try to cover whatever's on your mind. We do have some written questions, but with smaller groups. We do the written questions just so everyone's aware. We do them to make sure that we cover as many areas as possible, and because we have other town hall meetings, we sometimes run out of time. And one of the worst things that happened when we started doing these way back when, because we've done well over 100 plus of these things, one individual came up after about the second meeting and was like, I traveled 60 miles to talk to you, and we only talked about 2 or 3 things from 2 or 3 people in the crowd, and now I have to leave and I don't have anything to take back. And so that's why we do this, so we can communicate back and forth. Want to obviously say hello to our assemblyman. Andy Goodell is with us bright and early. Comes to a lot of these with us, so we always appreciate it. We got a great team at the state and federal level and our local level also. And Vince Horgan is with us also this morning. Good morning, Vince. And let's introduce our staff here. Joe.
Joe Cebulski, I run Congressman Reed's staff in the congressional district. So the half that's not in the Capitol.
Yeah, so he's out of the Corning office primarily, but you'll see him all over the place. And Jacqueline.
I'm Jacqueline Schrott. I'm the regional director in Chautauqua County, and I am a resident of the town of Ellery.
So you didn't have to travel too far.
No, I live about 2 blocks from the golf course.
Oh,
It was great.
And exciting news for Jacqueline too. Can we announce it publicly?
Sure.
Jacqueline is engaged.
Yay!
So, that'll be in the newspaper tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you're ahead. No, so that's so if you need anything from the office, those are the folks that are there. That primarily we'll see in the office down at Benton Square, but we do office hours across the whole county. Please reach out to us and do whatever we can. Before we get started, well, we also have a de facto, another member of the staff, I guess we'll call her, with the State Democratic Party, doing her filming today is Sheila.
Hi, Congressman.
Good to see you again this morning.
You as well.
We're becoming like best of friends. Where's Alyssa? Is Alyssa going to be with us too?
She couldn't make it today.
Oh, all right. So this is all part of the process, so we'll just deal with that. Maybe a little bit of update from Washington, and then we'll get into the conversation. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion, and rightfully so, about the issue of Syria. Syria is a very serious situation. Just so everyone knows what my position is, I'm opposed to the strike into Syria, going into Syria, and remain opposed to it. If you've been following the news, You can see what Russia is doing. You can see what Russia has put on the table. And Secretary of State Kerry's been engaged with the foreign minister and the representatives of Russia to see if there can't be some diplomatic resolution to this situation. I was a proponent of sanctions and diplomacy as an alternative to limited airstrikes, and will remain a proponent of that. I do have concerns that this proposal is something of a, we'll take it for what it is, good faith, let's ferret it out, but when Russia and Syria team up, and as quickly as they responded and what they're doing, some of my red flags start to go up. So we just got to watch it very cautiously and see how this develops. And when I watched Assad yesterday take the position of trying to dictate terms, I don't know if you followed this, but he was coming out saying not only does America have to give up its military intervention publicly, Israel has to disarm, making more and more claims that he's trying to demand the terms of what is going on here. That's going to be problematic, and we'll just have to wait and see how this unfolds. But going into Syria right now is not in America's national security interest, in my opinion, nor has there been a presentation to me in all the information and intel briefings and other items that we've been privy to. What happens next? If you do this, how are you, when the response occurs, what is the plan, what is the strategy to deal with it? And we're dealing with an area of the world that's very volatile. We're dealing with a civil war where the sides both have anti-American influence in it. So not to have that strategy, not to be clear as to what the mission would be and how we would deal with the escalation that I see coming as a result of it is very troublesome to me. And that's another reason why we're opposed to it. So we'll see, and if there's any questions on it, I'm sure we'll get into that. The other issues that we have on the top of the plate, so to speak, we have the issue of a government shutdown. It's called the continuing resolution that we have to deal with by the end of the month. We also have the upcoming debt ceiling, because it looks like the data that's coming in from Treasury is telling us that the debt ceiling will be breached sometime around mid-October, maybe as late as November. So then the issue becomes, what do we do about those must-pass pieces of legislation? Now, just so everyone's clear where I'm at, I didn't go to Washington to maintain the status quo. I went to Washington to do something. I look at everything as an opportunity. I always try to look at it from a positive perspective. We have a debt problem. We're $17 trillion in the hole. We're going in more and more every year. We have to get this thing going the right trajectory. To me, the path, the vision needs to be clear. It needs to be, we got to get our spending under control, and we got to grow this economy and get people back to work. So not only are they not on the system, they're contributing more to the system. To me, that makes sense. And so those are the types of reforms that we're looking for. The other problem we have is we have an entitlement crisis that's booming as we speak. Just so, I don't know if you saw some news reports this morning as I was looking at some news clips. For example, Social Security Disability, the trust fund with Social Security Disability, the division of Social Security that deals with that. That goes bankrupt in 2016. 2016. You're looking at a situation where people who are receiving Social Security Disability checks are going to see an automatic 20% across the board cut in their disability payment in 2016. That should be a canary in a coal mine. That is what we're talking about when we talk about the entitlement crisis. Here we are in 2013, and we don't have a plan to deal with these trust funds insolvencies that are coming down the pipeline. And the other trust fund insolvencies that we're dealing with, obviously, are Social Security itself, Medicare, and the programs that are related to it. These are serious problems that demand that we do something about it, and we need to lead. And we want to be part of that conversation that is putting solutions into effect, and putting them in effect sooner rather than later. So we'll see how the continuing resolution, we'll see how the debt ceiling debate goes, but I didn't go to Washington to maintain the status quo. So if that's what they're proposing, you hear a lot of that discussion, just so everyone's aware. this is something we've already agreed to, this is spending that's already occurred, so there really shouldn't be a debt ceiling control, and we should authorize unlimited amounts of additional borrowing. That's maintaining the status quo. I'm not interested in doing that. Same thing with the government shutdown. You know, we're gonna have to deal with something that's gonna be reforming the programs. Yesterday, I signed on to a resolution working with Tom Graves from Georgia. He has a resolution that deals with the continuing resolution in the government shutdown. What it does is it says, look, let's keep the doors open for a year. Let's do it at the budget control, what we've agreed to be the numbers. So we're gonna keep the numbers right where they've been agreed to. And what we're gonna do is delay Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, for 1 year. To me, that makes some sense, because there are numerous people, both sides of the aisle, that are coming out saying this is not ready for prime time. This is not ready to go, this Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. We need more time. There are people like the president himself who have waived the employer mandate. So that's an indication the president recognizes that they got problems with this law. So why not have a proposal, keeps the government open, delays the Affordable Care Act, and deal with it going forward for another year. So we'll see how that goes. It seems to be gaining some traction, seems to be gaining some support, and hopefully that's something that will be explored as we return next week. So with that being said, I could go on and on and on. There's a few things on the plate in this upcoming fall. We got the Farm Bill, we got the Intel reauthorization, we have welfare reform that Andy Goodell and I are teaming up and working we had a great roundtable with the social welfare folks, and appreciate you participating in that, Andy, and I know we're doing an op-ed together, so I appreciate that.
Well, actually, that's a good segue, so I wanted to give the opportunity to Senator Goodell if he had any updates that he wanted to give people, or?
No, I appreciate being able to join you, Congressman. A lot of times, issues that we deal with involve both local, state, and federal issues. The Congressman mentioned welfare reform, and I've been doing a lot of work with Vince because the county is the feet on the ground, so to speak, the boots on the ground, and Pierre is going to be wrestling with that shortly, I hope. And there's a lot of state issues as well and federal issues, so that interface is important. And so whenever I can, I try to join the congressman, get an update from Albany and from Washington, and it's good to see Vince here as well. So thanks for letting me come, and guys, thanks for getting up so bright and early. Tom, you said bright and early. I knew it was early. I wasn't sure I was bright.
I'm just drinking my coffee.
We've done quite a few town hall meetings in Chautauqua County. I believe someone's come to all of them, so it's great to have that type of relationship with our state government. Because as the Senator said, a lot of times people call us, they're really calling it a state issue, they call it a federal issue, or it's something that impacts both. So it's good to have that. And a special thank you to the supervisor. We can't do these things without a host, especially early in the morning. It's very helpful to be able to use the room. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks.
So we do have a couple written questions, and with a group this size, I think we can then open it up to the floor. Both of them do touch on Obamacare, but I'll read them as written. James says, he has a couple comments on 3 different issues. 1, no amnesty, it's not fair. Oh, thanks. 2, no Obamacare. Friends have already been put on fewer hours. You might want to comment on that. And then no gun laws. We need to enforce those we have.
All right, James? Right here. All right, right in the front. A lot of agreement between you and I. So I don't know if there's anything you want to specifically delve into a little bit more on that, but we agree. Second Amendment, we're going to stand firm, believe in it. It's constitutional individual freedom, guaranteed by the Constitution, so we're going to stand firm and fight that. The other issues with the Affordable Care Act you're touching on, Obamacare, the President himself calls it, that there are now effects that we're seeing. I can't tell you the number of employers and people that have come up saying that they've had their hours cut, they've had their threshold of 50 employees, people aren't hiring past that 48, 49 number. That's a real problem, and it's another further reason why we need to deal with this situation. Obviously, I stand for repeal of it, but also at least delay it at a minimum, and move forward with it. So, I don't know if there's any more you want to
No,
share.
it's just, you read about it, and then my wife came home, a friend of ours, all in a tizzy, because her hours have been cut, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but not good.
No, not good. And you know, even when you have folks like Mr. Hoffa joining us and expressing the concern, how he wrote a letter to the president on behalf of the Teamsters Union, saying that this is a threat to the 40-hour work week. This is a real problem, and you know, we joined in that sentiment. We joined with Mr. Hoffa and say, you know, this is not good policy for America, and it has significant adverse effects. So appreciate it. We'll continue with the fight.
I don't know if there's anything on immigration with the other issue.
Oh, immigration?
Yeah.
Yeah. To give you an update, one, first of all, just so everyone knows where we're at, you know, this whole issue of amnesty and those types of things, we do not support amnesty. Okay, so everyone, just so you know where we stand, what we believe in. But as we deal with immigration, there is a need for reform. But what we can't do is what they did in 1986, I believe it was, the last time they did immigration reform, is not deal with the underlying root problem, which, because in 86, when they did the reform last time, they were promised, look, we do it, we won't have a problem, we'll correct it, and we'll never deal with it again. And now look at you, fast forward to 2013, you have 11 million folks undocumented illegally here in America. So clearly, they failed in that position. And so when we deal with it now, we got to deal with what is causing that problem to exist. And that has a lot to do with border security, making sure that our borders are secure, making sure that we're deploying technology so people can come and go in a way that protects our national security. But one thing, just so you also know where I stand, I'm not one of these numbers guys. I'm not one of these guys who says only X number of people can come to America and then the doors are shut. I believe what's made us great is our diversity. We are all the sons and daughters of immigrants, every single one of us, at some point in time. And so what we need to do is not put arbitrary numbers out there. What I believe we need to do is secure our borders, let people come and go to America in a safe and secure manner. There are issues of reform that do need to be addressed. We spend a lot of time in regards to our guest workers for our agricultural interests. I don't know if there's any farmers in the area or in the crowd today. Maybe you could speak to it more than I could. But I can tell you I have heard from numerous folks in the ag community talking about their labor shortages, talking about their inability to get their crops harvested. Why that happens when we have 7 to 8% unemployment in the district and in the area is very frustrating to me, but it's a reality that these farmers face. And I'm going to stand for these family farmers. I'm going to stand to make sure that that way of life is in a position to be passed on to the next generation, because I believe in it. So they have a real problem there. And so we're talking about things like H-2A, reforming that system so that the farmers have an access to labor that allows them to get their work done. We've supported expanding into the dairy industry. We have talked to numerous dairy folks. They're not part of H-2A, and we'll continue to advocate for expansion of that. The other area is dealing with our foreign students, because we have so many institutions of higher learning in the district. We have heard it loud and clear. We generally have a policy in America right now, because of our broken immigration arena, that we educate a lot of foreign students and we give them a diploma, and then essentially we show them the door and send them back. To me, that's not smart. We can do better. So we need to have some reforms there so that those students in particular have an ability to stay here after they get their degrees. The other thing that I'm sensitive to, I am sensitive to children who have come here at no fault of their own. One thing that we've discussed is making sure that those children have a path to be here legally and be here with the right to citizenship. One thing that I've talked about is the people that violate the law and come here illegally, you know, the penalty, why don't we have them forego their citizenship ability? Give them some type of legal status, some way so they can stay here legally and deal with those issues. But because you violated the rule of law, you don't have the ability to apply and become a citizen. To me, that makes a lot of sense. One, I've talked to a lot of folks that have come here legally over the years, and they said, "How is that fair? I follow all the rules And then people that don't follow the rules, all of a sudden get the same benefit that I came here to America to get, and that's my citizenship. What's the penalty, is what that here. And that resonates with me. It's just not fair. It's just not right. And second, when you talk to the folks that are the parents or that have come here illegally, you're telling me that I can stay here in America and that risk of deportation can be removed over my head. And what I have to do is pay the penalty of not having my citizenship rights granted, but my kids have an opportunity to have that path. I would say it's overwhelming. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Because you gotta remember, when you look them in the eye, when you talk to them, like we try to talk to everybody, when you listen to them, they came here primarily to better themselves and their kids. And you're giving them a path, a reasonable path, to allow that to occur. They'll be all in my opinion. So, you know, those are kind of reforms that we're advocating, we're kind of taking. Where we're at in the process, there seemed to be some momentum developing on this front, but then Syria happened. And Syria's kind of taken a lot of the oxygen out of the room. So in the beginning of the summer, I probably would have said, yeah, there's probably a likelihood that we'd have something potentially by the end of the year, and then 2014, there'd be this debate and maybe something to the finish line. Right now, that because of what's happening, I don't see that happening as clearly. I think you'll see some markers put down for the 2014 campaign season as to where people are at on the issue, but actually getting to the finish line is probably, given these other things that are going on, something that is not likely, in my opinion. Now that can change. A lot of things can change overnight. Syria was one of probably the most recent and best examples. You know, it came out of really nowhere and became a priority rather quickly. So, anyway, what else do we got?
Barbara has a comment on what is actually a rather common misconception about your retirement benefits and how lucrative they may or may not be. Why is Social Security, health care, and retirement benefits good enough for the American people but not for the President, Congress, or Senate? 5 of my family retired from the Navy, and we get 50% of base pay, and you get 100% of your base pay, which, for the record, he does not. All should have the same.
Well, I agree with the first of all, who, Barbara? Right here. Agree with you 100%. Anything we do in Congress should be equally applicable to us as it is to every American. So that general philosophy we share 100%. There is a lot of misinformation out there on benefits that we receive as members of Congress, because we've heard this now for 3 years, and just so we're fully transparent where we're at. For retirement purposes, as Joe points out, you know, we don't serve one day and get 100% pay in perpetuity. That's just not the case. What it is we're like any other federal employee. After 5 years, we vest, we contribute towards a retirement program, and then after 5 years, what is it?
It's
4
slightly more than 1%
Yeah.
times the number of years that you serve, so it's 1 point something or other. But nothing unless someone has 5 years in the federal system, and it's the exact same FERS system that other federal employees have. So to get to 100% of base pay, you'd have to serve about 80 years.
So like after 5 years, you get 5%, because it's like
Yeah.
1.2%,
Yeah.
somewhere around there. You get 5% of your salary when you retire. And then each year it goes up by 1.2 or something like that. It's a formula like that. So that is clearly something that's not accurate, which is good. And for some reason, what we find is a lot of time in these pieces of misinformation, there was a kernel of truth at some point in time that this generated from, and there could have been a point in time when that was the case, but we're not part of anything going forward, nor do we want to be in a position where we're treated any differently than anyone else. The same thing with healthcare. You know, healthcare, some people think that we serve one day, we get free healthcare for life. It's just not how it works. For purposes of healthcare, I'm a non-union postal worker. As what happens when you go to Congress, they give you a slew of plans that you can qualify for. They're all the non-union plans, and you look at them, and my wife and I looked at all of them, and we said, you know, being a non-union postal worker works the best for us. So what we do is we contribute like a non-union postal worker. We pay co-pays, deductibles, all those things, just like a non-union postal worker would do. And I think that's good, and we'll keep working at it. Did that answer your question? I mean,
I think so. Do you pay into Social Security?
we do, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we're treated the same for Social Security purposes, and rightfully so.
That was a change, I believe, in the '80s. There was an old federal retirement system where no federal employee, including members of Congress, paid in Social Security. They had their own system. And then they changed it to a significantly less lucrative pension, but all federal employees, including members of the Congress, participate in Social Security. And our staff, same for our staff. Kirk, we've talked about Obamacare, but we'd like to ask you about Obamacare and something we had talked about, the current budget sequestration.
Okay.
That's me.
Yeah.
Kirk Kelly.
Okay.
I'm kind of the voice that we haven't heard in all this Obamacare. I work for a doctor,
Okay.
my wife, and we moved here 9 years ago, actually almost 13 years ago, and my wife started a practice here. And one thing you're not seeing is in this, the voice you're not hearing is the voice of the doctors and how they're being treated by this whole Obamacare. And the mountain of paperwork that has come down on top of these sole practitioners is amazing. And I could hand you graph after graph about how many sole practitioners are joining larger groups or leaving the area. In this area alone, we watched, there used to be 5 orthopedic surgeons, there's only 2 now. There used to be 2 neurologists, there's 0 now. We're watching these physicians leave the area or retire very quickly. These are the same physicians that refer to my wife, that help her business grow or go along. When they leave, she has to leave. You're seeing, as you know, your district has got a very low rate of physicians. It's considered what do they call that, an area of need for
Yeah.
physicians.
I'm sure
As a
it's
matter of fact, if you look at the
most rural
graphs,
areas, yeah.
your whole district is red.
Yeah.
There's not enough physicians in the area.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a voice that's not heard. And so Obamacare, what it's gonna do is it's kind of like giving everybody in the world a car right now and tell them to go out on the road and drive it. There's not enough infrastructure to handle it all. Doctors are limited to how many patients they can see a day. It's all about billable hours. Pretty soon, when you have more people trying to see you than you can, you have to start saying who I can see and who I can't see. Most doctors are saying we're not taking Medicaid patients anymore. We can't afford to do it. Can't afford that message. Medicare is right behind it. On top of that, that wants to segue into what's happening with the sequester. Now, I know you said yourself, you have you're treated the same way when it comes to retirement benefits and all that stuff, but I understand that the sequester is taking a 2% cut out of doctors' reimbursements for Medicare right now. Now, we never thought we were going to be hit by the sequester. We said that's a politics thing, that's a Washington thing. That's going to be vets, FBI, IRS. We're never going to take a hit on that. Well, we are now.
Plus you're facing the doc fix.
What?
The SGR, you're facing also the SGR.
And the SGR, which is always hanging over the head.
Always
of the
hanging over your
doctors. It's every year you sweat it out.
Yeah.
So it's getting to the point, and I noticed that you said that, well, you take the same kind of hit, you feel the same pain that we do, but I don't think you took a sequester hit, did you? I mean, they're not taking 2% out of your paycheck,
Yeah.
but they are out of anybody that has anything to do with the government.
Now, our budget's been hit 10% over the last 3 years.
Our budget for our office
Right.
was sequestered on top of each year that Tom's been in office, at least, our budget has been cut in addition to the sequester cuts. So our
So,
budget's a little tight.
But then when you
the
look at
the point you're making, I empathize with. I mean, you are feeling the impact of what's going on here. And I back up a little bit to say, why are we having this conversation? Why is this occurring? And it goes back to because of our debt problem. We're $17 trillion in the hole. We're about averaging $1 trillion in the hole every year. So there's not an endless supply of money that's out there to cover. I talk with people on both sides of the aisle, talked with leading White House officials, Bernanke, Geithner, all those guys. They will tell you it's not sustainable. This type of financial, economic policy for America is not sustainable. So then the question then becomes is how do we have this debate going forward? And I think a lot of this debate, if we could center it around prioritization, what are our priorities collectively as a nation, we can then come to a reasoned plan to get our spending under control. That's what we're trying to do, and that's what we're trying to advocate for. Now, to give you some positive news, I am very hopeful that the SGR, the docs fix that's coming up, will be taken care of this fall. And that you don't have to, we were a part of a voice and effort last year, when this issue came up, where we thought we had something. We thought we had a permanent fix to it, and we were very close, very, very close. The price tag was significantly higher than what it is this year, because it has to be paid for when you take this, when you make this change and put this fix into effect. And this year, because of some new calculations, because of what CBO, the independent guys who judge all this stuff, came up with, you got a price tag of about 139 billion versus about 300 billion of where we are to fix it. That helps a tremendous amount in regards to getting this thing taken care of, so that you're not faced with this 30% cut in your reimbursement for Medicare patients that are coming to your wife's office. Hopefully we get it done. There's a lot of effort to do it. They just moved a bill out of Energy and Commerce. It's coming over to Ways and Means. I serve on Ways and Means, and I can tell you we're going to be a voice to work to make sure that we get that taken care of. And so you look at the doc fix, and then you look at the 2% cut that you're referring to. That's the cap on the sequestration, how they split it up between defense and non-defense. And you're right. As I've told folks, especially in our rural areas, you have cut into the bone. You are now jeopardizing the provision of health care in our rural communities. That's why if you look at our record, if you look at what we've advocated for reimbursement in particular, we've primarily focused on primary providers, finding ways that they can keep their doors open. Because if our hospitals in our area shut down, you have or providers have to close their door and leave, which we're seeing. You have a real access to healthcare issue in our district. That's why also we've been passionately involved in the issue of the psych center in Elmira, for example, because this vision that's coming out of Albany and New York City, that they're going to close our psych centers in the southern tier, Elmira and Binghamton being the primary examples of it, and push all of our mental health delivery through a throughway system, kind of going up through the throughway, through Albany, Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo. That is a complete lack of understanding of our area, of how it operates. You know, I've had folks tell me, well, it's easy, just get on the subway and get over to your psychiatrist, you'll be all set. Have you ever been to Western New York? It's not a subway ride from Binghamton, from Elmira, from the southern tier to Rochester, Syracuse, or Buffalo. And that's a real problem. So we're working on it. We've done things with our Medicare dependent reimbursement programs, be a strong advocate for that. Our low volume for our hospitals, being a strong advocate for those types of legislative fixes to make sure that they're not hit any additional amounts. So let's continue to work together. I mean, I appreciate your frontline input because you're dealing with it. Your wife's dealing with it. And this whole impact that Affordable Care Act is putting on top of you, Obamacare is putting on top of you. I applaud you for trying to stay afloat because I've heard so many people that just said, enough, we're done. Especially older physicians. We're hearing that quite a bit as we go around. You know, they're at the point in their lives where they're like, I'm just done. I can retire. It's not going to be as a great retirement as I thought it was going to be, but I've just had enough.
Or partial retirement, what everybody's looking at. There's people that are dropping off, you know, they're OBGYNs, but they're dropping off the OB and just becoming a GYN.
Or they're working part-time.
Part-time.
Yeah, we're hearing that quite a bit.
Because it's, why work so hard if there's no retirement?
There's no return.
Our doctor retired, done.
Done.
Not even jail, but done.
There's 2 people, 8 o'clock in the morning, know of a case where that's occurring. So we'll continue to work forward, but also, you know, we do have to deal with the issue of healthcare in America. We do have to deal with it. There are some reforms that need to be implemented, and we'll be the first ones to tell you. I mean, a lot of guys, elected officials, will get up in front of you and say, oh, if we cut all the waste, fraud, and abuse, that will take care of it. If we put tort reform in, that will take care of it. I advocate for both of them, but it's just not being 100% truthful with you. It's a bigger problem than waste, fraud, and abuse and tort reform. And one of the things that we're advocating for is to move off that fee-for-service system. You kind of touched on it with, it's all about billable hours. We need to come up with a payment delivery system that rewards effective, efficient care. That's a great sound bite, but once you get past that sound bite, how you define that is where the real devil is.
I think the act you should bring back to Washington should be Affordable Legal Representation Act. And tell lawyers that, you know, a divorce is a 99213 and you get $50 for it. And in a car crash is a 99245, and you get $30 for it, you know, and then why don't we put that on the lawyers and see where they go with it?
It's a good idea.
You'd get sued.
Andy says you get sued.
And never let it happen.
You're touching on it, you're touching on it.
We'll do, just finish off written questions and we'll go right back to the floor. So there's a couple issues actually that Barbara had we didn't get to. One of which you mentioned your work with Senator Goodell, and then one is just a sort of quick one. Why do I have to do your analysis and people on welfare don't? I think that's something you've worked on legislatively.
You know, we support that.
Why can welfare get beer, soda, lottery, cigarettes with welfare money? So welfare reform, and then she advocates for term limits, which I believe you're also in favor.
Term limits for welfare recipients or for politicians?
Two separate ones, but I'm guessing it could be both. Yeah. I believe it's for.
Please, terms for welfare.
Yeah, I believe it's for town.
Well, on the term limit, we've been supportive of term limits. We have a debate internally, and we want to bring it up today. So has a different opinion, but that's what we're all about, having differences of opinion. Because, I mean, and I get Joe's point. Joe's point is, you know, there's term limits in the sense of every 2 years. We're elected by the people. We stand in front of the people, and some people will take that position. I believe, you know, it's good to have the change in the institution, and I've seen it firsthand. 2010, there was 86 of us, 89 of us at the end of the term that came in that have changed the institution from within. There's a lot of us. I think 48%, 44% of us in the Senate and House have less than 4 years worth of service. We know no other president other than President Obama. That's a good change in the institution of having that fresh blood and that turnover. So we've supported term limits and will continue to support it because I have seen numerous places where, how should we say, the districts are such that they'll stay there till the cord is pulled. You know, they'll be barely breathing and still there because they're still going to get elected. Regardless of what they do. And that's a problem, and that needs to be cleaned up. The other issue was welfare reform and doing some areas on that front. I can tell you, Andy Goodell has been a great partner on these issues, food stamps and welfare, and on the state level, and we've partnered up. We spent a lot of time talking about this issue, and what we're talking about primarily, start big and then we'll get down into some of the weeds, is we're not talking about removing the welfare or food stamps for people that are going through that catastrophic curveball that's been thrown in life. We've all experienced it. We've all been there. I can tell you firsthand. Youngest of 12. My father died when I was 2. So my mom raised 6 of us in a household, all by herself. And she lived off a Social Security check and a military death benefit check. But those are kind of life experiences you don't plan for, that you don't see coming, and they happen. So no one's talking about removing that helping hand. But what we're talking about is removing that cycle of dependency, that entitlement type of mindset, where it becomes a way of life. And that is what we have to break. And so what we're talking about are doing some things like common sense type of stuff. In the food stamp bill, we're going to be part of an effort. We're part of a small group because that's part of the farm bill, and we're moving on that next week, probably in front of the House. You're going to hear a big number. $40 billion cut in food stamps. That's what the top line headline will be. Just so everyone's aware where a bulk of that number comes from, about half of it, comes from requiring able-bodied individuals without dependents, without kids. It's an acronym that they say in DC, it's called ABOT. DC has all these acronyms and it's frustrating, but that's what they call them. So it's able-bodied without kids. And what we're saying is, if you're in that category, you have to work, you have to be in a program. If you can't find a job where you're getting a degree, some type of skill set training, or some other program like that. Also, can't do any of that. Volunteering counts towards that work requirement. And I will tell you, the opposition that we have heard from that has been mind-boggling. People are how can you be so heartless, Tom Reed? Why are you taking away food stamps from people? Why are you fighting the fight? And I'm like, do you understand what we're trying to do? It's the old adage. You give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach a man how to fish, you feed him and his family for a lifetime. And we're going to continue to bring that adage to Washington. So those are the type of reforms. One other area that we're interested in doing is that we're also interested in doing some things when it deals with parents with kids. And one of the requirements that we're interested in becoming part of as we go into this debate on welfare reform, TANF is the acronym that's associated with in DC, is to say, if you have a child, you're going to be held accountable in order to receive your benefit at 100% of its level. If your child doesn't go to school, is not in school, you as the parent are going to feel financially a penalty as a result of that. From a welfare benefit, food stamp type of position. To me, that makes sense. What is so wrong with that? Can anyone, because we're just starting to roll this out, can anyone tell me what the counter argument, what the problem with that would be? And I throw it to the group. Anyone say anything? I mean, to me, that makes sense. That now what you're doing is you're sending a message that, look, there are things that are going to require you're receiving public assistance, and there's going to be things that we're going to require you to do because you're on the system, so to speak. But we're really trying to get you and your next generation, break that cycle of dependency, off the system. And one of the key things, in my opinion, is if you can get an education, if you can, education's key to breaking this cycle of dependency. And so having kids go to school, to me, goes a long way to breaking that cycle of dependency. Arms them for a lifetime. So we'll continue to fight that fight, but I can tell you we're going to get lambasted. And make a note of where we talked about it. So I made an entry in the iPhone so we can look at this part of the tape. So you may see those comments again in later commercials.
Tom, can I make a...
Yeah, Andy, please.
I really appreciate Tom's efforts, Congressman Reed's efforts on this area. In New York State, as you know, we have some of the highest welfare benefits in the nation. And part of that's driven by our colleagues in New York City. I have supported, with Senator Young, a Public Integrity Act, it's called, which would preclude people from using their welfare benefit cards at casinos or adult entertainment or liquor stores, really trying to focus using those benefits in a way that's most beneficial for them and their family. That passed the Senate 2 years in a row. It's been blocked in the Assembly because, as a former member once told me, Vito Lopez, he says, Andy, you don't understand, 30% of my district is on welfare. There's nothing I'm going to do that would impede their ability to collect as much as they can collect. And that's that mindset. And so it's extraordinarily important that we have the partnership with Congressman Reed and with the federal government to address some of these issues. New York State had a Learn Fair program for a while where welfare benefits were tied to school attendance. The implementation was so horrific that it just collapsed under its own weight. I'm working now to draft legislation with the support, I would say, of Jamestown School District, where the focus is on education. And the concept that we're working on is if Johnny, if any of you are named Johnny, I apologize in advance, but if Johnny misses on Monday, the school would make a commitment to provide after-school services to help Johnny catch up. And if Johnny didn't catch up or didn't...
The issue, though, too, that we have to talk about is what DC is failing to do, in my opinion, when they come up with ideas like this, because it's great on a piece of paper in the sense of, okay, we got to contain these costs, so we'll come up with a formula that contains these costs. That's what they're essentially doing. But how does that impact people that are on retirement in particular? And by that, what I mean is when they go to the store, when they go and pay for gas, how are they covering those expenses? How are they surviving? And that isn't taken into as much consideration, in my opinion, as it should be. And that's where I try to look at these issues from. And that's why I appreciate what you're bringing to our attention, is you're really talking about how is this going to impact real people? Now, this should again highlight the problem that it's trying to address. And the problem is one, $17 trillion worth of debt that we're in the hole on. It's also trying to deal with the situation of Social Security insolvency, as Kathleen Sebelius, Medicare insolvency. She won't use, I use the term bankrupt. She got offended at a hearing when I asked her that question. So I go, well, what do you call it? She's like, well, I call it underfunded. So whatever the political term is, underfunded, it's bankrupt.
That polls better.
So, yeah, so the problem is they're trying to contain these costs to stabilize these accounts, but they're stabilizing the costs on a piece of paper, failing to realize what this paper represents to people on the front line. And that's what we can't do. But we can't just maintain the status quo, because there's going to be a lot of elected officials that will come before you and say, you're right, I'm going to oppose that, I'm just going to fight to oppose that. But offer no solutions as to this impending 2024 Medicare insolvency, 2033 Social Security insolvency, and Social Security disability in 2016. We got to have the conversation. There's just not enough there to cover it. So how do you do that? That's the million-dollar question. And there's things that can be proposed. I mean, some people talk about age indexing, recognizing we're living longer, that type of thing. But you got to do that in a way that doesn't impact present retirees or the people so close to retirement that they don't have an ability to readjust their retirement plans. To me, that's not fair, that's not right. So there's still a window to do that in. And that's why the sooner we do this, the easier. It's going to be hard, but the easier it is as opposed to waiting. And then you're on the eve of the crisis. And then all bets are off as to what's going to happen.
Sir, yeah.
I have a question, Congressman.
Yeah. Always Tom.
I don't think it affects older people, but it's certainly going to affect my grandchildren, is the unrelentless snooping of this federal government into their personal lives and our personal life. I don't know what section of government controls that, but way back during the Civil War, when I was in school, they taught a class called government. And I thought from that perspective that the legislative branch controlled the executive branch. Why is this going on? Why is this Congress permitting this dredging of information? Now, I don't particularly care if someone knows that my wife wants me to pick up groceries on the way home. That's immaterial, but why do they do it? Why do they need this vast store of knowledge? Somewhere down the line, we're gonna get kicked in the ass for it.
Yeah. Well,
And I don't know how you could stop that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the Congress or what.
yeah, definitely Congress has a role in it, there's no doubt about it. This is where, when we were dealing with the appropriations process, Justin Amash, a member, proposed some amendments to defund the NSA, to kind of shut down the NSA snooping program and that thing. We opposed that, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why, and one of the biggest reasons why, is you still had the language. Remember how DC works, going back to government class. You have authorization legislation that authorizes a program to be in existence, and then you fund it, kind of with Obamacare, same type of thing. You know, you got authorization, Obamacare, funding it, go hand in hand. With the NSA, what Justin was trying to do is say, okay, we're going to keep the law on the books, and we're just going to say no more money can go to that law. But just as Obamacare, you find out with that 6 to 94% split between discretionary and mandatory. I've seen enough games in the short time I've been in Washington that when you try to go down that path, they'll move money from the mandatory side into the discretionary side. They'll take money out of defense and they'll use it over here that's already been appropriated, it's on autopilot, and they play the shell game. So if you really want to get to the problem, you got to fix the law, the authorization law. And that's what we're working on, because the intelligence reauthorization bill that deals with these provisions that give authority for people to engage in this type of activity are coming up for renewal. And I'm teamed up with Marlon Stutzman, a member from Indiana, and we're really trying to focus on how do we narrow down the government's ability to do this oversight, this intelligence gathering. And one of the principles that we adhere to in that reform is making sure that there's an independent judicial check on anything where an agency is going in to get information. That you have there are the NSA courts and things like that that kind of are in place to do that, but I think we need to expand that. I think we need to make it much more transparent. We need to give that information a public scrutiny, in my opinion, and we're going to continue to do that. Now, the reason why they're doing it, just so you know what these folks are up to. When 9/11 happened, there was a lack of intelligence gathering that led to a lot of what occurred in 9/11. And the people learned that, oh boy, if we had just been doing this, this, and this, we could have prevented 9/11. So there's that internal, emotional argument and position to say, we need to make sure we prevent another 9/11 from ever happening again on American soil. And that resonates. That resonates with all of us. I would hope it resonates with every single one of us. But at the same time you're doing that, you can't forget who we are as a country and as a nation. And that's the balancing debate that it's very difficult. And I'm very sensitive to. Because I want to make sure the intelligence agencies have the ability, when they identify a bad guy, that they can get the information to make sure the bad guy is put on the sideline and not attacking us on American soil. But at the same time, I don't want them going after all of us. And we're living under this socialist state, this communist state, or this government 1984 type of environment, because then we've lost America that we believe in. So that's where the lines are. So I think more of the public scrutiny, more of the independent review, more of the ability to know what's going on needs to occur. So stay tuned.
Is it true that there are key things that you text or say that trigger the background?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, just so, because this has all
That's what
been,
I've heard.
a lot of these have been declassified now, and as we went through this debate, which is good. The whole metadata, where people, the snooping issue, where they were collecting cell phone,
Data mining.
all those things, they weren't getting to the content of the information. It's, in my opinion, looking at being briefed on it. What they were getting at was just like on your phone bill. If you remember when we had long distance bills, and we may still have them, where it tells you, you called this number from your number from this time to this time, and we're going to bill you X number of pennies or $1 or $2, whatever it is. That's the data they were collecting. Why was that data important? Because if there is a bad guy that they then pick up, that they get intelligence that, okay, John Doe is going to attack America on such and such a day. They needed something to go back to say, well, who is John Doe talking to? So that we can maybe find out who his accomplices in that effort are. And that's what they were building. They were building that chain of information so that when they got the hit, they would bring it back and go, okay, well, John Doe was talking to Joe Sempolinski on 3 weeks ago. Maybe we should go talk to Joe Sempolinski. And actually, it was demonstrated to us. That's what was on the Wall Street bombing. That data prevented that from occurring. Because the guy was driving from Denver to go to Wall Street to blow it up on the subway. And because they had the data to go to, they said, oh, he's talking to this person down in the financial district. Maybe we should go knock on the door. When they knocked on the door, they found the material that would have been utilized in that thing, and they prevented it. So this is where you got to balance these two together, and it's not black or white. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, perhaps I missed it before, but as far as closing the border, where do you stand on that?
We need to secure the border. Closing is sometimes the term I use when people are saying we can only let X number of people come through and then the border's closed. I don't support that. I believe having a border where people want to come to America, you're welcome. It's what made us great, and we'll applaud that. But you got to come here legally, and you got to come here in a way that we have a national security interest at the border, so that we know who's coming and who's going. And this is what's so frustrating, because as I talked to the guys over at immigration and those departments, I said, when I go to a bank anywhere in the world, I can put my ATM card in, and it will tell me name, address, how much money's in my bank account, all that type of data, right? Before it will give me $20. You're telling me our federal government doesn't have the technology or capability to create a system where you apply, do what you got to do to scrub your background information, and then all of a sudden you can just swipe the card or show your card and you got the biometrics and everything, and you know exactly who's coming, you know what their background is, they're coming and going, that doesn't compute to me. Why does that happen? A lot of times when we ask the question, you know, you hear the adage, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough people. That's DC punting. That's the common refrain I hear in DC, and I'm sure you hear in Albany, is we need more money to solve this problem. No, what we need to do is hold employees and agencies accountable and do the job that's at hand and measure it and then hold them to those metrics. But so I'm a firm believer in a secure border, and we've been supportive of those efforts. But we got to take care of that first as we deal with this problem, because else you recommit the problems in 1986 where they said, we're going to take care of the borders, and clearly they haven't, because now you got 11 million folks here that are here illegally.
One of the complaints I've heard over the years is that there's too long of a wait for
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Ben.
for getting your citizenship. And, you know, I think maybe that's part of the problem, is just move the thing along. Maybe we need to transfer some people out of the IRS and into
Into the other area.
the other end, yeah.
Or just hold them accountable, and
Yeah.
well, you say you can't get there, well, get it done. And that's a real problem. I mean, it's how do you hold someone accountable in a public entity? Especially when a public entity, when there's a lot of protections. If there's a bad employee, you gotta go through the whole review process and all that. You've heard that story, you've heard it locally, you've heard it elsewhere.
Well, the comment that you made is so true. I don't have enough money or enough people. That's heard in corporations also, but that's the difference between a winning corporation and a losing corporation, okay?
The winning corporation gets it done.
They get it done with less, that's right.
And the winning corporation reads the material before they proceed forward.
Absolutely.
That is frightening, Tom, what you mentioned. That is totally frightening to me that there are politicians that are passing laws and are not even reading it. I mean, I have 2 kids in college. Do they get to go to the professor and say, give me the 4.0 first, then I'll do the work afterwards? Absolutely not.
Amen. And that's one of the changes with a new group of us coming in 2010. Before 2010, I was in that special election, so I went down that last November, December, before the class of 2010 actually was sworn in. I remember vividly, I'm going to the floor, right? And I'm texting these guys.
It was on taxes.
And yeah, it was on the tax, expiring tax provisions that had to be taken care of. So it's a very substantive vote.
Yeah.
I'm texting our guys going, what does this section say? And my guys respond, I'm literally walking to the floor from the office across Independence Street, right? What does this section say? We don't have it, it's not final yet. I'm voting in 5 minutes. And then they're sending to us at the last second. You know, so what we did as part of this new effort, we have the 24-hour amendment rule. We have the 3-day rule that things have to be printed, published, have an opportunity to read it, look at it, and then make an informed decision. Now, people will say, well, you haven't followed that rule 100% of the time. That's true. We haven't at times, because we've had to make decisions because you get up on a deadline and you just got to make a decision. But I'll tell you, we're much more informed in the debate, because those rules have required tremendous amounts of these proposals to essentially be published beforehand. So when the final proposal's put together, you're armed with all that data and that information. So you can say, oh, this is coming from Tom Graves' section that we read in this other bill, or this is coming from Tom Reed's legislation in that package that's been published and out there for 3 or 4 weeks. And it's cobbled together. So, very frustrating.
So ultimately, if everyone had read the material on Obamacare, then it wouldn't possibly have been passed.
Could have been a different outcome, absolutely. You know, I won't speculate on it as to what would have happened, what could have happened.
Well, no,
but
you can't. I'm just trying to make a point. I have one very quick question, because welfare is an issue nationally. In New York State, do we still, it was my understanding that we do not have any pre-residency requirement. In other words, someone can walk into the state, file for welfare and get it.
It's my understanding.
How absurd is that? I mean, I am all for supporting our residents.
That's only gonna get worse now, because the health exchanges that they're putting in place, and other states aren't doing it. For instance, Texas is not following through on this health
Yeah,
insurance
so move to New
exchange.
York.
So now it's gonna be a move to New York scenario, because,
I mean, I'm all for helping society. I will pay for college educations, but please, do not move into our state. It's hard to stay here, and I love it here. It's hard to stay here knowing I have family in other states, do not have the tax burden. And they look at me and say, are you kidding? I wanna retire here. I mean, how much more there's some simple things, not to eliminate people from getting assistance. But, you know, let them come in and do, if they can, get a minimum wage job. Live here for a time, and then if you still need the assistance, absolutely. But don't just walk in, drive in from Pennsylvania, I don't know what Pennsylvania's laws is, but, you know, drive from Pennsylvania to here, say that you're living with a relative, and get our welfare, and then go back and,
I appreciate that, the frustration, I am.
and that's a simple thing, I would think, to me, common sense, that's a simple, you're not taking benefits away from people that are currently receiving them. So you're not gonna have the discrimination, it's literally, if you're a resident, you may receive benefits, but there is a residency requirement, even if it's only 6 months.
Well, and I think Andy's comment is very telling, when he referenced what Vito Lopez told him on the floor, is he said, they're not going to do anything that's gonna prevent that benefit because of politics. It's their constituency. And that's a real problem, we gotta change that, because this is what gives me a lot of hope. I'm always trying to look at it from a positive perspective. They know, as I've talked with them on the other side, and other folks that focus just on the politics, there's guys on our side that do the same thing, that just focus on the politics. They know it's not sustainable, and the whole thing collapses. And that's not in anyone's, not in anyone's interest, so.
Well,
hopefully that keeps
in society, as I see it, I'm in my 50s, you know, we had the greatest generation with, you know, the book, and it's true, you know, my father served as your father in the Korean War. You know, hardworking generation. You know, my generation, hardworking, have more luxuries, okay, absolutely, because of the hard work. You have a huge generation now of entitlement attitude. They are not gonna be able, I mean, we're having a hard time sustaining it when we have had a mentality of living under your means. You know, people who live through the Depression, et cetera, and our senior citizens are having a hard time sustaining life, okay? There is a real social issue here going on, and I mean, it's just, I am so fearful that we are going to lose, and for my kids, and for my grandchildren, whom I don't have yet, but I'm thinking of it, you know? You know, America is a great country. We're falling apart. And it's just, it can be stopped, but people have to stand up.
People need to stand up, need to get engaged, and that's what I try to do every day. Because there's a lot of people that are just throwing their hands up and saying, I'm done. It's too big of a fight. We're fighting for something that we cannot lose, and that's America.
Well, quarterly taxes are due on Monday, so I have a feeling, sometimes I feel like I'm writing it, you know, pay to the order of Jane Fonda. I mean, you've got 60 radicals running the show in the executive branch. You're a nice guy. Don't be so nice and go after them, please.
Appreciate that.
Please.
Don't take the smile. I believe in what I'm doing.
Okay.
And that gets, my mom, being youngest of 12, you always gotta kinda try to work with people, talk to people, and we'll continue to do that. But that doesn't mean we're just gonna roll over and play dead.
We are about a half hour over, so.
I want to just thank you for coming
Yes,
down
thank you.
here to have this meeting. I know you've got other meetings, and I've missed some other meetings you were here. whatever, but it is so encouraging to hear, okay, what you have said, and Vince, and Goodell here, Andrew, and I just want you to go back, okay? I want you to see, the people are hurting out here, and they're frustrated as hell, okay? And we need people like you. You're too rational, okay? You're just too rational. I mean, you know, you think, well, sure we do. But we need that, and we need people like you to go back to Washington. And, you know, I'm thankful for what John McCain done in his life for this country. Lindsey Graham, okay? I'm tired. We need new faces out there in our party, okay?
appreciate that.
People like you,
Well, thank you.
so
I
we
appreciate
appreciate it.
We're gonna fight like hell.
Okay.
Take note of the 1,000+ motorcyclists that rode into DC thickets, nothing on the TV, completely ignored.
That's why I love doing these town halls, because you actually then get the real sentiment as to what's out there. And we do it, we use Facebook, we use all the social media, and, you know, there are counter arguments, there are people that are of a different perspective, but at the end of the day, I believe the majority of us feel that we need to stand up and fight for the future of America.
Absolutely.
So, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to Supervisor for,
Thank you,
having us.
anytime.
Yes.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate it.
How are you?
What girl is coming yet?
I enjoy the town halls we do, it's just, they're great.
We're 8 girls in a row. And then 4 boys.
I got called to jury duty.
They kept going.
Thursday, so I won't know until Thursday evening whether I'm going to be available Friday night. So
No, I
I'm
appreciate
counting
it.
on being rejected for any
You and your ideas.
Well,
$40 a day. How are you?
take care. Good, thanks.